So it is Monday, the 25th of September, 2023, and today I've got my very special guest, Pete Brady from Superfly Funk Soul Belfast. We have collaborated to put together one of our We Love 45s events. We are going to Belfast for the first time outside of England and Scotland. So we're going to Northern Ireland for the first time. So I'm really excited. I've never been to Belfast, so I'm really excited about visiting the city. But I thought it'd be great to have a little chat with Pete about the event, about what we've got happening, and discuss a little background. So first of all, how you doing, Pete?
I'm doing good. Criztoz, how's you?
I'm good. We were just talking before we came sort of live that we're both really busy, which is great to see. It is exhausting, but it's all positive and it's all going in the right direction, which is great.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we've got this event coming up, so I'm really looking forward to that. We've had some great events already this year across the UK, so it's great to be able to bring it to Northern Ireland as well. But let's start a little bit about you. So when did you first get into music, and who were your sort of musical influences from a young age?
I guess I suppose like many young teenagers, Criztoz, secondary school really was the start of all of that,
Yeah,
And for me, I've told this story once or twice before, and I love this story. The reason why I got into the kind of music that I'm now kind of known for was, I guess, a lot of it down to just pure coincidence. It was down to how we were placed in class, and it was all down to alphabetical order. And as it turned out, the two or three guys behind me and the couple of guys to the left hand side of me
right.
had older brothers and sisters who were into the kind of mod scene. And those kids at 11 or 12 years of age were listening to bands like The Jam and maybe Small Faces and some 60s orientated groups. And we obviously, because you were seated together in every class all the time, those are the kind of guys that you got to know first.
Yeah.
So I mean, those friendships from 11 years of age, Christos, are still friendships that I have today with the same guys, which is incredible when we fast forward 40 odd years later, you
Yeah.
know.
I mean, that is amazing, and it's one of the things that I'm sort of learning more and more with music. Obviously, the friends you make in music and through DJing and through going to events are pretty much lifelong friends. Once you've
Mhm.
sort of connected on that level of a particular style of music or a particular thing like DJing or live acts or whatever, that stays with you, doesn't it, throughout? And it's great that you've still got friends 40 years later who got you into this in the first place. Um, that's amazing, yeah. So
I didn't
from
have any older siblings, you see,
okay,
so
yeah,
that's
same here.
that's when I became a little reliant on them. And I would love to be able to tell you that I was a cool 11-year-old already listening to that type of stuff, but I wasn't. I think Adam and the Ants were probably my thing back then. And
Yeah,
I know to discover bands like the Jam and the Specials, who became a really important part of my musical journey, was great to be able to kind of delve into that and see where it kind of takes you, you know.
yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, similar to me, I've got two younger siblings, but I haven't got any older. So I was sort of relying on friends or sort of music magazines. We talk about music magazines now because that's where I used to get a lot of my information from about
Hmm.
music. Now it's obviously the internet, and music magazines aren't quite as popular as they used to be. But yeah, no, it's great that you could still connect with those people and still have those relationships now. So from there, obviously listening to the music, at some point, I assume you started going out and going to clubs and events that were playing this
Well,
music.
I guess for the first few years of those friendships, Chris, we were just way too young
Yeah,
to be able to attend any events and things like that. But as we kind of approached maybe around 15, 16 years of age, say about 15, there was a Saturday afternoon club in a venue called the Delta. It's no longer there. And to be honest with you, even back then, I'm surprised that building was still standing because
right.
it was almost like a derelict building. But it was a real gathering of lots of really cool kids who kind of followed a slightly older crowd. And it's funny that some of those older brothers and sisters who influenced the guys that I became friends with were all in attendance at this place. And it
Wow.
used to run from like 2:30 until 5:30, I think, on a Saturday afternoon. The windows
Okay.
inside were painted black so that it felt like a nighttime environment. And I remember going there for the first few times and listening to 60s bands like the Small Faces, the Action, the Creation, the Kinks, the Who. a lot of kind of mod revival stuff. But then, as I guess the older guys who were DJing, and when I say older, they were probably 18 when we were 15,
Yeah,
but they started delving into Tamla Motown 60s soul a lot more, and
yeah,
that turned into a bit of a Northern Soul Fest. And do you know what? I remember walking in, and one of the records that really stood out for me then, because it's a powerful track, and it's a guy, Edwin Starr, who's obviously, his vocals are incredible. And I remember hearing the song "Time" for the first time, and it just blew me away. And
wow,
watching these older kids dance to that
yeah.
was like, it's like nothing I'd ever seen before, and it just really captured my imagination from there on in, and it's lived with me forever, really.
That's amazing. And the dancing is important, isn't it? Because it's all well and good to listen to the music, but when you can hear it loud and in a venue,
Of course.
and obviously people are dancing, that is infectious, isn't it? It gets you wanting to get up and dance and all the rest of it.
Absolutely, and
Yeah,
there was an element of you need to be brave to
yeah,
approach that dance floor for the first time, and I would say now that I knew that I felt foolish trying to kind of trying to replicate some of what they were doing
yeah,
in my own way, and it maybe didn't work the first few times. I seen people try outrageous dance moves and fall and slip and land on their backs or their behinds on the dance floor, but that was all part of it. And
yeah,
everyone just kind of took it. It was good fun, and you might have got laughed at for the first couple of times until you kind of were brave enough to just keep at it and then make your own dance moves, your own kind of signature moves,
yeah,
and then it just became something that you wanted to improve on and get better at it, and we all did that. But then again, we were carrying a lot less weight then. We were a little bit more. I don't know what the word is. A bit more flexible back then.
yeah.
We could do a lot more now that we couldn't do now.
Again, it was a different time, wasn't it? Because this was pre-internet, and being able to go and just listen to whatever songs you wanted to, at the touch of a button. It's very different back then. You had to hear the records in these clubs or
Hmm.
somehow get a copy of them. Perhaps on back then probably cassette, maybe. Was that
Yeah, absolutely.
really
Yeah,
new again?
and I think then, Criztoz, the only kind of downside of the timescales, I guess, were essentially that whole kind of mod scene was coming to an end, really. And
Yeah,
every scene comes in circles, doesn't it? The mod scene was starting to die off. Maybe I think as those 18-year-olds became 20, 21, 22, they started to get maybe serious with girlfriends or boyfriends. People got
yeah,
married really young, and people started to drift away. Um, so that became for us, we had to think about it, because we really enjoyed the music and we really enjoyed the dancing. The dancing was a huge thing for us. So we would have turned up at, I guess, what you would call normal type discos with a bag of records under our arm, and almost kind of tugged at the sleeve of the DJ until he relented, and eventually gave in and played some of our records. And
yeah,
at that stage, we may have been lucky to have three or four records played during the night, but because I mean, we were all 18, 19. We were very agile and we had the moves. There's no doubt about it. And
yeah.
we would have cleared, the dance floor would have cleared to allow us to do our thing, while people almost formed a circle around what we were doing. And it was
Wow.
mesmerizing for normal people who didn't really understand and know what this was. But we were just lost in the moment.
Yeah.
And, we didn't really mind then really what the rest of the music was for the remainder of the evening, as long as we had our records represented, even for a 15, 20 minute spell within that night. That was us, job done. And that's pretty much as good as it got back then.
Amazing, amazing. I mean, yeah, it's great to hear that that has stayed with you all this time, because I haven't yet been, and we'll get to the venue in a minute, but I have seen some footage and some videos of people dancing, and certainly at other sort of Northern Soul clubs and funk clubs and all the rest of it. And it is amazing to see the generations still of like the younger kids. I call them kids, probably like 20s,
Well, yeah.
and then obviously 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s. That's what I love about what we do in terms of music, because it is hopefully accessible to people across the age gap. Cool. So that's obviously you going out. When does there come the point where you become or decide to become a DJ and get into sort of playing music yourself?
Um, that original venue I talked about, the Delta, we knew again it was coming to an end. and there was another venue called Richardson's. It was just an old drinking man social club type thing,
Yeah.
and there was a like a room upstairs that people could hire out, and there was a local scooter club that used to run a soul night on there every 2 weeks, and it was really great. It was because at that stage those guys were maybe another year or two older again,
Yeah.
and they were starting to venture into. They were still playing Northern Soul, but they started to venture into more modern and crossover stuff, and that was obviously taking my thought process to a different level because I was kind of starting to move away from the whole northern thing then. Not totally, but realizing I guess that there was more out there than just 60s soul, Tamla Motown and Northern Soul.
Yeah.
There was other types of soul music out there that really it just really resonated with me. I loved it. So we then at about maybe we were 17, we thought, well, you know what, why can we not do this? So six of the friends that I got to know from I was 11 years old in
Yeah.
school got together, hired out this place, ran a night in it. And as you talk about pre-internet days, Christos, there was no, there was no social media. There were no mobile phones. We had to just sell tickets manually, and
Yeah.
we had. I mean, can you imagine? We filled that venue. It would have pulled in about 150 people every other Saturday night for the scooter club, and we pulled 300 people in as
Wow.
17-year olds, and we played. We kind of give six of us all a slot each, and maybe one guy played kind of two tone and ska, another guy played 60 stuff, somebody else played 60 soul, someone else played mod revival. I did what I did, and we all had a slot at it, but it was amazing. And I think given the opportunity to play other types of music, and my ears and my eyes were starting to become open to other things. The Style Council, believe it or not, and I know look, there's loads of guys out there who are heavily influenced by Paul Weller, and I get that. But the Style Council for me were a band that opened my ears to, and this is really the beginning of what I started to do because I discovered funk and jazz and other genres of music through some Style Council covers that made me
Yeah.
want to explore a little bit more. And I started as that mod scene died, and a lot of those guys got really into, I guess, lying around in a field drunk at scooter rallies for the weekends. That was never going to be my thing. So me and my good friend Michael kind of started really exploring Blue Note jazz, and that was an avenue that we went down, and that I guess started taking us to London, and that was my first kind of experience of London as a big city and starting to go to places over there, and that was such a real experience for someone so young.
That's amazing. And I love that you've found different genres of music through the Style Council and covers and things like that. Because for me, I come from sort of hip hop because I've always loved hip
Hmm.
hop, and again through hip hop I've found out about jazz and funk and reggae
Of
and
course.
Latin and all that, and it sort of led out and that. So it's interesting to hear that you've done the same, but from a different aspect and a
Hmm.
different genre of music. And it's great that there is so much other music. And yeah, like you say, coming to London at such a young age must have been amazing. Have you got any cool stories from back then?
Yeah, I mean, London was it was mind blowing going there back in the day. I think really at the height of the acid jazz scene
Yeah,
was when it was such a great time. And I know Blew Up became a bit of an institution as a club,
yeah,
but we were attending there when it was in a small bar called the Laurel Tree in Camden before it went to the West End. And those nights, so Andy Lewis would have played back then, and the guys that formed the Blew Up record label as well. Obviously, would have been playing back then, but that was crazy, Christos. Those nights were absolutely incredible.
yeah,
Talk about talk about small, cramped, really sweaty venues. The condensation running down the walls, people up dancing on tables, and it was just crazy. And to hear stuff like, I mean, I was really big into bands like Corduroy and the James Taylor Quartet,
yeah.
Brand New Heavies, Galliano, all that type of stuff. And so to hear all that mixed in with loads of different other stuff was they were just incredible. We just lived for those weekends and couldn't wait to get back. And obviously then when it moved into the West End, it became a bit of a different beast. But even when I got married, I took 15 guys in who all went to London with me for my stag weekend, and we all went to Blow Up on the Saturday night.
Amazing, amazing. Well, that's very cool. That's a very cool stag night, stag weekend. And again, it wouldn't have been you know, not that it's not necessarily easy now, but now you've got cheap airlines, you can get across the countries quite easily. Back
Yeah.
then, again, it would have been quite difficult, wouldn't it, to sort of get across?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, even the amount of airlines available,
Yeah,
weren't even what it is now. To be honest with you, so it was an expensive enough weekend, but I carried that on for many years, Criztoz. I became then really good friends with a group of, say, younger guys. They're probably in their 40s now, and
yeah,
we still keep in touch. But these guys were all Arsenal fans, and we then went to London maybe 3-4 times a year, every year. Went to the game, but the Saturday night, and it's ridiculous. It's maybe a little bit embarrassing, but they all give me the nickname. They call me the captain, and they used to
right.
say, right, captain, where are we going on the Saturday night?" And I
Okay.
would have said, "Look, guys, it's not just my weekend; it's your weekend too." And their attitude was, "But listen, you've always brought us somewhere good, so we're happy enough just
Yeah,
to kind of follow your lead." So we did go to, we went to the Jazz Cafe in Camden. We went to Blow Up when it was in the WAG in Wardour Street, and we took in some gigs as well, and those guys were always happy enough just to come along. So we had some great weekends listening to some great music while we were taking in a game, and we did that for probably 10 years as well. Before these guys all started to settle down and move
yeah.
away as they get married.
That's great. And again, we talk a lot about community and mental health on a lot of the shows. And obviously, you've got there two styles of community. You've got the community in terms of around football and the fact that you've all got an interest in football in a particular
Mm.
club, and obviously you're going to go to a game together. But you've also got the community in terms of, right, what we can do after is let's go and do something interesting. Rather than just sitting in a pub,
Yeah,
getting blottoed or whatever. Let's actually go and see some cool music and that. And again, the sort of music community. But the whole hanging out for the whole weekend means you get past the sort of small talk chit chat at the beginning, and you get to hopefully have these deeper conversations, which is great. Which is again why I love the events that we do, because we start
hmm,
off being record nerds talking about records, but because we're there for 4, 5, 6 hours, or a weekend, like when we're coming to Belfast, you have conversations that you wouldn't have normally, because you go a bit deeper and find out more about
of
what
course.
people are up to. So again, that's another important element of what we do, and I guess that comes across in what you do with your events as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I'm really proud of the fact that all those guys through music and football are still my friends today,
Yeah,
and they're people that I chat with even via message or whatever, almost on a daily basis. But I think as those London trips again, all they really did for me was inspire me and make me want to go and do something of my own. And in the very early days, Christos, we were running. Well, I was running maybe with one or two guys who maybe guest DJ or whatever every so often. These kind of like kind of almost rare groove acid jazz type nights. And I used to get really frustrated that only maybe 45, 50 people turned up. But
yeah,
when I think back on it, to put in 50 people, not only for the fact that the mod scene had died on its behind, but also that Belfast was in the absolute height of the troubles at that stage as well.
yeah,
So to pull in 50 people into a city centre bar, and it wasn't in a great area on a Saturday night. When I look back on it now in hindsight, that was actually a real achievement, that people wanted to come and listen to
yeah.
this, and we're happy enough to take chances and risks, because believe me, it was a risk to go into Belfast city centre back in those days. There's no doubt about it. Of
Yeah, yeah. Well, that again, not having lived there or been through it, these are things that obviously we would have only seen through television and the news and all
course.
the rest of it. And unless you've lived that, you just can't appreciate what was actually going on. So, like you say, amazing that you managed to achieve what you achieved. There's also an element of sort of curating your audience as well, isn't it? And that it's not necessarily always about quantity; it's about quality.
Mhm.
You could have
Absolutely.
300 people who are there, but they're not really into the music. They're more into, oh, this is cool, or this is a scene. Or you could have 50 who are really into it and really vibe. So again, that comes back to sort of community.
Yeah.
And you've got to start somewhere, like we were sort of talking before the show. You've got to start somewhere, build something, see how it goes, and keep going at it. That's the bit. Never give up. And at
Yeah.
some point, if what you're doing, you believe in it enough, and enough people are interested in it, it will achieve something, and often take you in different directions that you never expected to happen. That's another thing I love about what we do.
Yeah, of course. And I think whenever And again, I think nothing happened for a very long time. I mean, anything that I did in terms of music, I probably didn't DJ for a number of years, Christos, because really there was no one to play to anymore here in
Yeah.
Belfast. Um, and then it would have been just gigs. I went to loads of Paul Weller gigs, loads of Beautiful South gigs. Over the years, I took in great artists like Lonnie Liston Smith. I seen him in the Jazz Cafe in London.
Yeah.
I seen Gil Scott Heron play in the Tunnel Club in Glasgow. So any opportunity I had to go and see people like that, where and when I could afford it, I always made the effort to do that. Um,
Yeah.
and then again, I guess it all ties into my secondary school days. I ran into the guy that sat next to me on the left, who was a bit of a commercial DJ. That's what he did for a living, but a really good guy, a guy called Mal Houston. And Mal was obviously back in the day, really into the soul scene. And we would have spent many Friday evenings sitting in his house listening to music, or his next door neighbour's house, who were also friends of his, but who were also into the scene. And I bumped into Mal one day, and at that stage in Belfast, there was this little bit of resurgence of a couple of clubs springing up again. A good friend of mine called Marty McAllister ran a mod night called Afterglow, and it was doing quite well. And Mal said to me, "What about a Northern Soul night? Do you fancy it?" And I said, "I haven't done anything for years, Mal, but why not?" So we got
Yeah.
ourselves this cool little venue and ran a night in it, and it only held, I mean, 120 cap at the very most, but the place was rammed, and the atmosphere was brilliant. The music was great, and at that stage, I knew, boom, I need to start doing this again. I have to. I've missed this
Yeah.
so much, and we ran another night shortly after that. Again, it did reasonably well. But a few other nights had sprung up then as well. So it became a very competitive environment, Christoph, in a
Yeah.
small city. And it's really hard to try and capture the same people all the time whenever the same people have relationships and friendships with other promoters as well as me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they want to be seen to be supporting everyone, and obviously can't afford to go out every weekend. So numbers after that, I think after that, Mal was tied down with a lot of his normal day work, which would have been weddings and christenings and all that type of stuff. And I understood that. And at that stage, we were running that little night was called Night Train. And I thought, do you know what? If I want to carry on, I'm going to have to just. And I don't want to become another Northern Soul night, because there are 5 other nights all playing that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I need to do something a little bit different. So from there, I created Superfly and changed the name of the night. Started playing some funk, some jazz, some hip hop, some disco, and those nights were sometimes really well attended, and other times it was it was awful, because there might have
Yeah.
been 2 or 3 other nights on within a 4 week period. And again, as I say, it was really difficult for people to support all that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that was a real critical moment for me, Christos. I kind of went home really deflated after a gig one night, and I thought, I have a decision to make here, and it's either wrap it all up and think, I've had a good time, let's just forget about it, or can I do something a little bit different that's going to make me stand out from all of these other nights that are taking place, and also will help me encourage more kind of just normal people to come along
Yeah.
to see what we're doing. And that was my kind of pivotal moment back in 2015. It would have been, and I then moved venues, and we moved. I'm sure you probably remember I was running some events on a boat called the Belfast Barge.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that was a really cool, quirky venue. There was no bar on it, so people were able to turn up with a box of beer under their arm.
Okay.
Um, More sophisticated ladies would have turned up with cool boxes with
Yeah.
bottles of gin and their lemon and lime all sliced and all chilled and whatever,
Amazing.
and their tonic water, and it was great. But you could afford then, because the venue wasn't cheap to hire, but you could
Yeah.
afford to put maybe a £20 ticket price on it, because
Yeah. Because
people
people
were
bring
happy
their
to
own
pay
booze
that,
along.
knowing that that was their only financial outlay of the evening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we initially kicked off with some local bands, a really cool band called the Freedom 35s, who are heavy Hammond driven instrumental band. They have supported Booker T, they've supported Sharon Jones when she came here to Belfast, and they
Amazing.
have a great reputation. Fantastic band. They sold out every time for me. We used the Argonauts, who obviously then was signed to our record label, and we had a band called Supertonic Sound Club from Dublin came up a few times, and they played for us as well, and they were all great nights. Um, but really, from there, around about that time, the whole radio thing started as well, and that kind of moved things to a different level. Then, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's amazing, to hear the origin stories of things, because obviously people look at something and they think, oh, they've got there really quickly, or that's that. But you've been doing it for a long time, and
Hmm.
you learn and you change and you tweak and you make things better until it gets to what is the current product. So you've touched a little bit about the record label.
Hmm.
Tell us about, did the radio come first or the record label?
Yeah. Do you know what? Well, obviously I was in England, not at the weekend there, but the weekend before. And
Yeah.
it's only when I came home and I thought, oh, I've missed a really crucial weekend because I had no live show that weekend, and that would have been the eighth anniversary of the Superfly Funk and Soul show.
Wow.
So the show's been going for 8 years now. I can't believe
Amazing.
it myself.
Yeah, yeah,
It's been an incredible journey. I think again, my thought process when I started that show, and it came from a chance phone call when a great record store in Belfast City Centre called Belfast Underground Records decided to do something different, to do something that no one else was doing, and they
yeah,
purpose built a studio inside the record store. So I got a phone call from a friend of mine, a guy called Billy Anthony, really cool guy, and he said to me, Pete, listen, there's a kind of auditions as such going out for a radio show or a radio station in Belfast. The guy wants everyone to come down Saturday, this 15th of September. Most of the guys were all doing kind of house, techno, dance, all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. But he said that the guy that ran the shop wanted to have even a small handful of guys doing something completely different. And I thought, well, you know what, it's safe to say I don't lack confidence, and I can chat. So we'll go down and we'll see. So
yeah,
he gave us this kind of time scale, 5 records each, presented, and then he would kind of stand back and think, is this guy worth a shot or not? So I got my turn at it anyway. Really impressed him. He said to me pretty much, when can you start? And that was the start of the show. And I thought to myself, I could stand here and play old classic soul music all day long. It's maybe what people would maybe expect to hear when they tune in,
yeah,
but I don't want to do that because at that stage, I was starting to listen to a lot of bands on labels like Record Kicks and Jalapeno, all those kind of great like Funk Night Records and Timian. A lot of those labels were all starting to become part of what I listened to, really, and
yeah,
I thought I want to really start to champion this current day scene as much as I possibly can, albeit in my own small way. If it can be seen to be doing something for the current scene, then that's what I set out to do. And I guess from there, I used to get lots of stuff sent to me from bands and record labels. Would you play this? Would you play that? And I always got behind these guys and supported it. And that, I guess, in a sense, helps to grow and build some relationships with some of those bands. And at that stage, that's when I started to reach out to bring bands over from, I guess, what we would call across the water, and bring them
yeah,
over to Belfast to play. And many of these bands, absolutely for the very first time in Northern Ireland,
yeah. And that's amazing. And like you say, again, it's building those connections, and also promoting the bands, because everyone needs help. You could have the most amazing album, the best band in the world, but if you're not getting people promoting you and people hearing your music, it's just going to sit in your hard drive. You're going to sit in your garage or your studio. So
Yeah,
it is important also because yes, we play a lot of old music. A lot of the music we play is from the 60s, 70s, a long time ago now. But it is important to be able to promote what's coming out now, because that has a direct link to the music from back in the day, isn't it? If it wasn't for
absolutely.
that music back then, they wouldn't be making the music they're making now. So again, it's really important, and impressive. And like you say, being able to bring them to another country, another city that they may not otherwise access,
Yeah.
which is really important. So you've talked about Superfly Funk and Soul. Let's talk about the venue. I'm really looking forward to to checking it out. I've seen some photos. I've seen a little bit of footage. I've spoken to Colm, who I connected with, having been to see you play in Brighton, and then me and him now put on events in Brighton, which
Mm-hmm.
is great. And he's told me a little bit about it. But tell us about the venue, Ulster Sports Club, that our event's going to be at.
Sports club is what can I say? It's cool, it's quirky, it's very different from anywhere else in the city. Like I think, Criztoz, Belfast obviously was a bit of a no-go city for many years, and has now had a huge amount of investment. And there are parts of the city that you would not you'd be honestly you'd have been taking your life in your hands walking around 15 years ago. So the Cathedral Quarter, for example, is now the place to be. That's where all the best bars are, all the best restaurants are, and it's lovely. It's stepped in history. There are great bars who've been there that have been there for hundreds of years, like the Duke of York. It's lots of little cobblestone streets, cool restaurants, great places to eat. It's a super place. And Ulster Sports Club just sits on the periphery of the Cathedral Quarter. It What does it look like compared to the rest of those places? So the rest of those places obviously have had a lot of money spent on them and are quite modern, and
Yeah.
in terms of decor and aesthetics and whatever. But the sports club hasn't. It looks like it hasn't had a lick of paint since the 70s. It's very much like Moth Club in Hackney, for example, where it's wooden panel walls,
Yeah.
silver streamers behind the DJ booth, glitter balls, sticky carpets on the floor. But it's really cool, and it's very much on vogue at the minute. That's the place to go. You need to be there at a decent time. Otherwise, it's kind of form a queue and hope for the best type thing. But
Yeah.
it's the venue itself, and Johnny that runs it is really, really supportive. And obviously the costs aren't too high to put something on in it. The door staff are great. I mean, my daughter now does the door for me in nearly all of the
Wow.
events, and the
Amazing.
security guys really look after her and her friend who do the door for us, and they've all kind of built up this little relationship now where they all know each other and chat away, and we go and buy each other sweets and cups of coffee and whatever. So the relationship that my team have now formed with the venue and the venue staff is really great now, and it's such a welcoming place. It's a nice crowd. There's no nonsense. I've never seen any bother in it. I've never even really seen a bouncer having to throw someone out. People kind of come, and it's one of those ones, you kind of touched upon that earlier on. Sometimes we said you sometimes get a venue where there's 300 people in it, and maybe they're just there for the venue. They don't really know or understand. There is a little bit of that. I'm not going to shy away from that. But what I do see is a much younger crowd, I guess, give the music a chance
Yeah.
and are prepared to kind of let the music guide them. And what I see is a full dance floor, Christoph, really from kickoff right through to the death. I mean, it's very much at 3 o'clock in the morning. The
Yeah.
bouncers are like, because it looks like no one's going home.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things that come out of that. The first thing is I went to Joa Jones puts on a Juanita music night, and I went up to London on Friday, and her event was at the Walthamstow Trades Hall, which again is like an old working man's club, like
Yeah.
1970s. And I came up with this idea, and I think these places must exist all across the UK. And she was telling me that in order to hire the venue there, you have to be a member of the club, and that membership gets you into membership of all these other clubs.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing that we're now playing, maybe it's our age, but it's amazing that we're now playing in these venues that have hosted these sorts of events, probably from the 60s. I don't know. I'm
Mm-hmm.
making an assumption about the Ulster Sports Club, but I know Walthamstow has, and a lot of other work from the 50s, 60s, 70s, because that is where people went to listen to records, to socialize. And it's amazing that in 2023, we are still using these brilliant venues because they were built to last, I suppose. They were built and they were a great environment, and that's why I think part of it works, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's parts of the venue are that's so quirky. What they call the committee room upstairs, which is the green room. And last year when we had Norman Jay over, we brought Norman into the committee room. And again, it looks like, I mean, that's actually where we did a photo shoot for the release of the Argonauts, I Feel Love. And
Yeah.
when we brought Norman in, he had a good look around the room and he was like, wow, look at this place. It had like all these old paintings of ex-committee members on the walls.
Yeah.
The carpet looked to be 50-year-old. It had a mustard colored leather sofa in the room, you know.
Amazing.
But it
It,
has these big windows and it overlooks the city, and it's a great green room. There's no doubt about it for to bring any artist in there, and it's just so different. Because a lot of other venues out there. I mean, like Criztoz, we know that most of these modern venues are.
just
I mean, they're
boxes.
bland. They all look the same, and what is
Yeah.
one got as an advantage over another? I can't really see that. But Ulster Sports Club does offer something very, very different, and I think that in itself helps drive the crowds to it.
Yeah, well, exactly, and if it's a great venue, it's a great venue, and it's also a piece of history because obviously we play records, and yes, we play new records, but we also play old records, and
Yeah,
every
yeah.
record we play is a piece of history. It was pressed at a certain time, at a certain place, a particular record that was like a single or whatever, and again, so it's that history, and also going into a venue that has got all this history together. It just works, doesn't
Yeah.
it? It works really well. And the second thing you said was obviously the younger generation come in and they let the music just sort of guide them. I think obviously they listen to a lot of Spotify playlists, I imagine, or
Hmm.
YouTube playlists or whatever, which a lot of the time are sort of AI. And obviously where the sort of human element, where we sort of come in and you never know what the DJ is going to play next. But again, it's nice that they have that trust because they're used to a computer telling them, right, you like this song, you might like this song, and next track or next recommended. And it's a bit like that. So they listen to a record that one of us is playing, and it's like, okay, well, if you like this, you might like the next one. But equally, if you don't particularly like this DJ, because of the way we work and it's rotating 30 minutes or 45-minute sets or whatever, the next DJ you might like. And I think that's something else we bring rather than a
Yes.
single genre event where it's right, it's just Northern Soul or it's just hip hop or it's just drum and bass or whatever. So I think again that's something that is important in the events that we all sort of put on.
Absolutely. And I think, some of our successful nights over here in the last lot of months have been, I used to kind of hold down a residency for Deptford Northern Soul when they came to Belfast.
Yeah.
And then the venue that the boys used, it closed. It's a venue that's opened and closed loads of times over the
Right.
years. But I think it's closed for good now. So we had a bit of a chat about how can we move this forward, and we now run, instead of just running just a Deptford Northern Soul night, we run a Deptford Northern Soul versus Superfly Funk and Soul night,
Yeah.
and it means then that we will always have someone on to support before I go on. That
Yeah.
person, we've some cool guys. We've got a guy called Sarge who is an absolute legend in the scene and it stretches way back to those 40 odd years ago. Has an unbelievable record collection and is such a cool guy. We've got a young guy called Gareth McKinney from Bangor who is very understated. He's very unassuming, doesn't really talk about it an awful lot. But if you were to go to his house, you would be wowed by the amount of records that he has. A very, very much a dark horse. And again, such a lovely, lovely guy. Has been very good to me over the years as well. So I always like to involve really good people, nice people. Um, but so those guys will do their thing. Then I come on. Then I'll come on and do my thing, and then Deptford boys come on and do their thing. So the crowd, essentially, the point I'm making is they get a really lovely mix
Yeah.
of loads of different music all throughout the night instead of just turning up to listen to 5 hours of the one type of music. And
Yeah.
has that has kind of lent into some of our most successful nights because people now know that there's a good mix across the 5 hours or whatever that we're going to be playing, and that drives
Yeah.
people forwards.
Exactly, and it's the same with the 45s events that we do, because we sort of combine DJs locally and also who come into wherever city we're working with, and again, it's sort of everyone's got a different style, even within the set. That's what I love about what we do with 45. Even within the half an hour or 45-minute set, it might go a little bit sort of into different genres and that.
Yeah,
So we've obviously got this event coming up on the 13th of October, and thank you for sort of collaborating, hosting us. I'm really
grand.
looking
You're
forward.
very
It's at
welcome.
Belfast. So obviously you're playing, I'm playing. But we've also got T2 Funk, who's coming in from Chester, and he runs Regulate Recordings, and they've
Hmm.
been putting together some amazing upbeat funk bangers. You know, not just sort of your traditional. Let's take a record and just add a beat to it and make it more. You know, they chopped it up, samples, and got great production skills. And they've had some play on Craig Charles as well and things like that. So he's coming in. And then we've got Scotty Boy from Edinburgh who's coming in. He's been putting on events and been DJing for years. I think about 30, 40 years now. I think he started not far off when you started. I think he was about 13 or 14 in a hotel that his parents used to run, DJing from then. So he's got a wealth of experience, and his record collection is amazing. And we've put on events in Edinburgh with him. And then we've got Sam Tweaks, who has gone from being effectively a wedding DJ, found Twitch and has completely made it his own. He's become a Twitch partner. So he's like a Twitch ambassador, and he's got something like 15,000 followers now. And he absolutely kills it every time he plays. So we've got a real mix of great people, great stories in terms of how they've got to where they've got. And we're all combining on the same day, in the same weekend, at your beautiful city. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I just can't wait.
It'll be great to have you guys all here, Chris. Also, I know we were able to meet up in Brighton there last year, which was lovely to do. So it'll be even better now being able to welcome yourself and the other guys over here. I'm really looking forward to it.
Definitely. And tickets are available, as you can probably see from the thing. Tickets are in advance, and obviously they're £10 on the door. And so it's something different, I think, to what you've been putting on. So hopefully people will trust your experience and knowledge of putting on events to know that this is also going to be a great event. And we hope quite a lot of people come out and see us. And it's going to be great fun.
For sure.
So, Pete, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. If you hang on there for a minute, but it's been great, and I look forward to seeing you in person in a couple of weeks' time. Not long now.
Fabulous. Brilliant.
Take it easy, Pete.